It was supposed to be a routine night. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, a decorated U.S. Army intelligence officer, was driving home after visiting his parents in Virginia. He was in uniform, his ID clearly displayed on his dashboard, and his car registered to the Department of Defense. As he pulled onto a quiet highway exit, flashing lights appeared in his rearview mirror. He slowed down immediately, pulling to the shoulder, his hands resting calmly on the steering wheel. "Sir, can I ask why I'm being stopped?" Hale asked as the officer approached. No answer. Instead, the officer shouted for him to step out. Hale complied, slowly, deliberately, as he'd been trained to do during field operations abroad. But this wasn't a battlefield. Seconds later, shots rang out. 3 of them. Lieutenant Marcus Hale fell to the ground. He didn't get back up. The body cam footage was short. Grainy. Chaotic. The officer's commands overlapped with gunfire. No signs of aggression from Lieutenant Hale, no sudden movements, just a man standing still in uniform, arms barely raised, before he crumpled to the pavement. Within hours, the footage made its way to internal channels. By morning, the Pentagon had it. General Evelyn Ross, head of Joint Operations and one of the highest-ranking women in U.S. military history, watched the full clip 3 times in her secure office. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She simply leaned back in her chair and pressed a button on her encrypted line. "Initiate Defense Protocol 7, she said. "Ma'am," replied her aide, startled. "That wasn't a term used for domestic events." "I said what I said." Marcus Hale wasn't just an officer. He was intelligence. He'd served in operations that weren't even supposed to exist on paper. And he was family to some of the Pentagon's most loyal operatives. What the public didn't know was this: Marcus had direct access to Black Ops briefings, cryptographic systems, and overseas intel assets. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a national asset. Killing him wasn't just a tragedy. It was seen as a breach, a provocation. One that demanded a response. By midday, unmarked vehicles began moving. Not in enemy territory, but through American suburbs. The Department of Defense wasn't waiting for local investigations or press conferences. Something rare and chilling was unfolding, a full, silent mobilization. Meanwhile, the officer who fired the shots, Deputy Nolan Briggs, was still on administrative leave, shielded by procedure, sipping coffee in his kitchen like nothing had happened. He had no idea that an elite Pentagon unit was already en route to his location. And they weren't coming to talk. Deputy Nolan Briggs lived in a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind with trimmed lawns, porch flags, and neighborhood barbecues. Had told his wife the incident was a clean shoot. Claimed the man made a sudden move, that he feared for his life. He repeated the same line to his union rep, to his captain, and to himself, over and over. But there was one thing he didn't know. The Department of Defense had already placed him under Tier 3 surveillance. His phone was tapped. His home network was quietly breached. His movements tracked by satellites that usually monitored foreign adversaries. At 1:32 a.m., a silent signal was sent from a Pentagon black site in Maryland. Green light confirmed. 3 men in civilian clothing stepped out of a nondescript van 2 blocks from Briggs's house. They didn't wear uniforms. No badges. No insignias. But each of them carried clearance that outranked most of Congress. Their mission wasn't about revenge. It was about containment. Lieutenant Marcus Hale had access to digital infrastructure that couldn't afford to fall into public controversy. The narrative had to be controlled, the risk neutralized, surgically and quietly. Briggs was liability. Inside the house, Briggs sat on his recliner watching late-night sports highlights, nursing a beer. His wife had gone to bed. He hadn't noticed the flicker in the Wi-Fi. Or the slight hum outside, barely audible, like an air conditioner kicking on in the distance. By 1:44 a.m., the back door was opened without a sound. A flash of movement. No words. No warning. Briggs rose halfway from his chair when the first operative crossed into the living room. He tried to shout, but a tight hold and suppressed firearm stopped the thought mid-breath. One clean shot. Then silence. No neighbors stirred. No alarms went off. Just the soft buzz of the television screen left running, illuminating an empty recliner and an untouched can of beer on the side table. By 2:06 a.m., the Pentagon team was gone. No trace left behind. Not even a footprint on the hardwood. Officially, Nolan Briggs would be listed as missing. His cruiser would sit untouched at the local station, his home declared a scene of unexplained disappearance. Conspiracy theories would brew, but no proof would surface. To the public, it would be a mystery. To the Pentagon, it was resolution. By dawn, whispers began circulating in the intelligence corridors of D.C. Briggs was gone. No trace. No struggle. No witnesses. But people in certain rooms knew exactly what had happened, and more importantly, why. The Pentagon issued no press statement. The Department of Justice received a heavily redacted internal memo titled only, Asset Loss Protocol, Resolved. And just like that, the name Marcus Hale became classified. Not just his death, his entire existence. His military record was sealed. Search results led to broken links. Even his family's communication lines were rerouted through DoD filters. His parents were moved to a secure facility under the guise of protective reassignment. Meanwhile, General Evelyn Ross stood in front of a private tribunal at Fort Meade, a room composed of 11 defense officials with clearance levels unknown to most of the country. No names were spoken. Only code names and file numbers. The room was silent as she stood before them, holding nothing but a single folder. Mission accomplished, she said. Collateral risk neutralized. Media cycle is clean. Narrative suppressed. One of the masked tribunal members leaned forward. And Hale's family? They're under protective restriction. Monitored, cared for, and unaware of the green light decision. They believe the investigation is ongoing. They'll never know the full scope. And you're certain the local department hasn't pieced it together? Ross allowed herself a cold, thin smile. The local PD thinks he skipped town after getting threats online. The precinct issued a missing persons report this morning. His captain blamed mental strain. No one in the room questioned it further. This wasn't about justice. This was about control. Because Marcus Hale wasn't just a victim. He was a man connected to defense systems that spanned continents. Had he lived, the Pentagon might have weathered a storm of public scrutiny and internal leaks. But dead, he became a closed file. Forgotten, invisible, untouchable. And the man who pulled the trigger. Just another loose end, tied before it could fray. But there was one variable no one had accounted for. In a small encrypted chat room that only a handful of people on Earth could access, a silent notification blinked, Marcus_Hale_backup.vault has been decrypted. Somewhere overseas, a laptop lit up. And with it, the truth began to stir. The laptop was hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of The Art of War, sealed in a safe buried beneath 6 inches of concrete in a bunker outside Ramstein Air Base, Germany. The man who opened it wasn't military, at least not officially. He was known in underground circles only as Tracer. A former signals analyst turned digital ghost, Tracer had once designed defense encryption systems, before disappearing from every government payroll. But Marcus Hale had trusted him. Years earlier, after a covert mission in Syria went sideways, Hale saved Tracer's life and slipped him a drive. If I ever disappear, Hale had said, this opens the vault. Don't ask questions. Just make sure someone sees what's inside. Tracer never expected to use it. Until now. The moment the file decrypted, Tracer's monitor filled with classified documents, internal reports, interrogation transcripts, deep state memos, and encrypted communications between high-ranking officials. But at the center of it all was a digital journal. Marcus Hale's personal log. It documented everything. Not just foreign missions, but domestic surveillance orders, black bag ops, and most chillingly, warnings Hale had issued to his superiors about a growing pattern inside law enforcement targeting uniformed personnel based on profiling, paranoia, and escalated engagements. He had flagged it. Repeatedly. He had warned the Pentagon that soldiers returning home were becoming targets, not for what they did, but for who they were and what they represented. War follows U.S. home, he wrote in one entry. Out there, they call us heroes. Back here, they treat us like threats. Tracer scrolled through evidence Hale had compiled, bodycam footage from similar incidents. Surveillance drones capturing unlawful stops. Military dossiers buried under training errors. Email chains where complaints were quietly suppressed. And finally, a video Hale had recorded himself, sitting at his desk in uniform. If you're seeing this, something's gone wrong. I served this country in silence, believing the system would protect me. But if I'm gone, it means it didn't. I don't want revenge. I want truth. Not just for me, for every name you've never heard, every case that never made it past a memo. Show them. Don't let me vanish. Tracer sat in silence, staring at the screen. His chest tightened. This wasn't just a man killed in a misunderstanding. This was a purge of a soldier who knew too much, and tried to say too much. He pulled out a second drive and began copying the files. Then he reached for a secure satellite uplink. There were people who would want this, international watchdog groups, whistleblower platforms, defense reporters with encrypted inboxes. Tracer had stayed off the grid for years, but for Marcus, he would risk everything. Because the world thought the story was over. But Hale had just begun speaking. Tracer's fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard, every command hardwired into muscle memory. He bypassed international firewalls, masked his IP across 6 continents, and routed his satellite uplink through abandoned spy networks the NSA had forgotten existed. He wasn't just sending files, he was launching a data assault. The file was too sensitive for public servers. Social media would flag and bury it within minutes. So he turned to the dark web's most secure drop point, the Citadel, a decentralized publishing network used by rogue intelligence agents, journalists in exile, and whistleblowers operating in the margins of democracy. He encrypted Hale's video journal, the classified Pentagon memos, and the suppressed bodycam footage from the night of the shooting. Everything. He added his own metadata trail, verifying its source without exposing his own identity. Then, with a final keystroke, the files went live. Within 4 minutes, defense journalists in Brussels, activist lawyers in Nairobi, and blacklisted analysts in Istanbul received simultaneous pings. The headline echoed across private forums like a seismic wave: decorated U.S. officer executed after exposing internal targeting, Pentagon complicit. Tracer leaned back, heart pounding. But it wasn't over. His monitor flickered. A line of code appeared, not from him. SAT-54 motion log detected. Unauthorized signal trace. Someone had noticed. Impossible, Tracer muttered. He was using a cold link. Air-gapped. Then his screen turned black. A voice came through the laptop speakers, heavily distorted, synthetic: "You've activated Protocol 0. Your location has been flagged." Tracer was already moving. He grabbed the drive, tossed the laptop into an industrial shredder bolted beneath the desk, and hit a kill switch on the wall. The bunker's power cut instantly. Total darkness. Moments later, he emerged from a forest trapdoor wearing a snow camouflage parka. A one-man snowmobile waited, engine cold but ready. Behind him, the bunker's failsafe system triggered. It collapsed inward, erasing every trace. He didn't look back. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C. inside the Pentagon, General Evelyn Ross stood in a secure conference room with 6 advisors. The Citadel leak had hit level 1 threat status. Not because of what was released, but who was sharing it. "This is a breach," one analyst said, breathless. "We're getting mirror uploads from 14 nodes. Our disinformation team can't bury it fast enough." Ross didn't blink. "Then don't bury it. Shift the narrative." "Excuse me. We spin it. Release a prepared version. Redact what's dangerous, then pretend we're being transparent. Turn Hale into a martyr. Say we're investigating. Launch a task force, slap a new label on it. If we can't contain it, we control it." The analyst hesitated. "And if someone asks why the original case was sealed?" Ross turned, her voice like steel. "Then we remind them what happens when people ask the wrong questions." In a hidden refuge, Hale's family sat quietly in their safe house, unaware of the leak. Until his younger sister, Jordan, checked her old laptop. It buzzed. An alert popped up from a contact she didn't recognize: "Your brother's truth is out. Don't stay silent." She clicked the link. And saw Marcus, alive in a video he had never sent them, staring into the lens, his voice calm, measured, defiant. "If you're seeing this, they tried to erase me." Jordan gasped. Her mother dropped the mug in her hands. Marcus's father stood frozen, tears in his eyes. For the first time since his death, they understood. Marcus hadn't just died. He was silenced. And now, he was speaking again. Within 12 hours of the leak, over 3.2 million downloads of Marcus Hale's files had spread across the encrypted web. Despite government takedown attempts, the material wouldn't stay buried. Mirror links multiplied like wildfire. Data caches appeared on servers in Iceland, Ukraine, and anonymous Tor nodes. Hale's face, solemn, uniformed, resolute, became a digital icon overnight. But not everyone saw him as a hero. At Langley, the CIA's Domestic Integrity Division, a group rarely acknowledged outside of code names, initiated Project Eclipse. It was the agency's most aggressive containment strategy: media manipulation, asset discrediting, digital erasure, and if necessary, physical cleanup. General Evelyn Ross had already authorized black bag surveillance on Tracer, Jordan Hale, and any third-party publisher connected to the leak. But it was too late to stop what had started. Inside Congress, a heated classified briefing had been called. Senator Diane Holcomb, chair of the Senate Intelligence Oversight Committee, slammed her fist against the oak table. "You expect us to swallow this? A U.S. Army officer is killed by a cop, then his killer vanishes, and now a leaked video is being streamed in 4 continents, and you tell us national security's under control?" A Pentagon liaison responded carefully, "We're managing public perception." Holcomb's eyes burned. "No. You're managing a cover-up." A junior staffer handed her a tablet. On the screen, a deep-dive article from an international watchdog group laid it all bare: the surveillance logs, the doctored statements from the precinct, and connections to a string of sealed cases involving other military officers. One line stood out: "This isn't the first time. It's just the first time someone fought back, from the grave." Holcomb turned to the room. "We will open hearings. Subpoenas. Live testimony. You can't scrub this." A Pentagon rep muttered, "With respect, Senator, we already have." But Holcomb wasn't alone anymore. Within hours, 5 more senators joined her. A rogue coalition was forming, demanding answers. Demanding truth. For the first time in decades, the intelligence machine had sprung a leak from within. Jordan Hale makes a choice. Back in the safe house, Jordan Hale stared at her brother's last words again. She hadn't slept. Neither had her parents. Outside the window, unmarked sedans had appeared, watching. She turned to her father. "They'll come for us. They'll say it's fake. That it was an accident. They'll spin every word. Her father's voice was hoarse, so we speak first. Jordan opened her laptop and scheduled a live stream. No edits. No filter. Just her and her brother's truth. At exactly 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, her face appeared on screens worldwide. I'm Jordan Hale. My brother was Lieutenant Marcus Hale, U.S. Army. He died after being stopped by a local officer without cause. We were told it was a mistake. But now we know, they tried to silence him. Not just in death. But his work. His warnings. His life. She held up the drive. This is his voice. And I'm going to make sure the world hears it. The stream didn't just go viral, it cracked the algorithmic walls social media had erected. Thousands began reposting, translating, embedding, pushing it through every possible channel. Hale's story had become a movement. And in the shadows, General Ross stared at a screen displaying the live stream spread in real time. The windows closing, one advisor said. Ross leaned forward, eyes steely. Then we open a new one. She turned to her aide. Contact Blackguard. The room went still. But General. Blackguard hasn't been activated on U.S. soil in, she cut him off. I don't care. She looked back at the map, watching cities light up with Hale's image. If they want a war of information, she said coldly, then we give them a war. In the mountains of Colorado, buried beneath an inactive NORAD facility, a sealed program known only as Blackguard blinked back to life. It had no badge, no uniforms, no existence in any military or intelligence record. Born out of post-9/11 paranoia and fueled by decades of unchecked funding, Blackguard was created to eliminate existential threats to state power, domestic or foreign. It was never meant to be used on U.S. citizens. But under Directive 29C, recently reclassified under General Evelyn Ross's authority, the activation protocol didn't distinguish between enemy combatants and whistleblowers. Codename, Spectre. At 3:42 a.m., a man known only by the call sign Spectre received a single-line message on an untraceable device, contained the Hale leak. No oversight. No mercy. Spectre didn't respond. He never did. Within the hour, a 5-person extraction team began assembling from scattered cells across the country. They were chosen for their anonymity, former assets disavowed years ago, all presumed dead, living in silence under ghost identities. This wasn't just surveillance anymore. This was erasure. Meanwhile, the movement spreads. Jordan Hale's live stream had done more than tell a story, it awakened something. Veterans from across the country began speaking out. Former intelligence officers posted corroborating documents. Families of fallen soldiers shared eerily similar accounts of mysterious traffic stops, sealed investigations, and strange disappearances. A hashtag surged globally, #HaleSignal. Universities hosted emergency forums. Activist groups rallied across cities. Foreign governments demanded explanations from U.S. embassies. Even low-level military personnel began leaking minor intel, not to harm their country, but to say, we know. We see you. Jordan, still hiding with her parents, was contacted by dozens of trusted figures, journalists, truth activists, even sympathetic lawmakers. Offers came in to move them to protective custody, even international asylum. But Jordan refused to run. If Marcus stood his ground, she said, then so will I. Tracer resurfaces from an undisclosed safe zone in Switzerland. Tracer broke a decade-long silence and gave an anonymous interview to an independent journalist. Face obscured, voice scrambled, he held up the original hard drive. They called Marcus a threat, he said. Because he found something he wasn't supposed to. A pattern. A protocol. An unofficial system inside the system. He then released a second batch of data, this time, detailing other soldiers who had flagged internal abuse, surveillance misuse, and unauthorized law enforcement cooperation with military contractors. The files linked several state troopers and deputies, including Nolan Briggs, to a privately funded information-sharing group between domestic police and black-budget defense departments. A domestic network that wasn't supposed to exist. Until now. The tension boils inside the White House Situation Room. The president sat silently as his national security team briefed him. One aide said, "If this keeps spreading, we're looking at a full-scale credibility crisis. International blowback. Civil unrest. Military disobedience." Another added, "We could be seeing the first data-driven mutiny in American history." The president finally spoke. "And General Ross? She's gone dark, sir. No communications. Last ping placed her at an undisclosed off-grid location. Possibly coordinating Blackguard assets." The president's tone shifted. "Then bring her in. A beat. Or bring her down." Elsewhere, Blackguard moves Jordan Hale stepped out of a safe house in upstate New York to take a call. The sky was gray. The air still. She didn't notice the drone overhead. She didn't hear the black SUV roll down the road with its lights off. Inside that vehicle sat 3 Blackguard operatives, masked, emotionless, and waiting for the order. From a secure satellite line, Spectre's voice crackled through, "Asset confirmed. Operation begins now." The moment the order was given, everything moved at once. 3 Blackguard operatives exited the SUV in silent coordination, infrared scope scanning, gloves on triggers, not a single word spoken. Their mission was clear: extract or eliminate Jordan Hale, seize the backup drive, and terminate any secondary sources tied to the leak. They hadn't expected resistance. They should have. 003, the safe house defends itself as the operatives approached. The front door of the safe house burst open. Jordan's father, retired Marine Corps, stood with a sidearm already drawn. He wasn't fast, but he was precise. The first operative went down before he could even raise his rifle. The second fired back, clipping Jordan's father in the shoulder, but by then Jordan had already moved. She'd memorized every evacuation protocol Tracer had drilled into her the day they met. She bolted into the woods behind the house, carrying the last remaining backup drive, the final copy of Marcus's complete records. Behind her, the house erupted in gunfire and flashbangs. She didn't look back. 009, Tracer's final move at a data center in Geneva. Tracer had been watching the ambush unfold in real time through low-orbit reconnaissance. His face was pale, his knuckles white. "She's compromised," he said under his breath. He hit a final keystroke. Initiate cascade upload. It was the last failsafe Marcus had built into the drive, an irreversible full release to every major media outlet, international watchdog, and public archival server around the globe. Once activated, there was no stopping it. 10 years of secrets. Names. Dates. Orders. Leaks. Protocols. And Marcus's face on every screen. 012, the world reacts within minutes. News outlets scrambled to verify the files. But most didn't wait. The footage spoke for itself. The truth behind the covert profiling program. Direct ties between law enforcement and black budget ops. Transcripts of internal warnings ignored. And a pattern of disappearances masked as routine. The world watched in shock, and then in fury. Protests erupted in over 70 cities. Veterans marched alongside civilians. Congress held emergency hearings. The president announced a full investigation and invoked wartime powers to deactivate and detain General Evelyn Ross and any involved in Blackguard. 015, Evelyn Ross cornered in a fortified outpost in Montana. General Ross watched the cascade unfold. Her aides had fled. Her command structure dissolved in hours. Still in uniform, she stood before a war room of empty terminals and blinking error codes. She had lost the narrative. Lost the operation. Lost control. As military police descended on the compound, she remained still, her final words spoken to no one in particular, "You don't win wars with truth. But you can lose them with it." She raised her hands. 017, Jordan Hale lives. Jordan, bloodied, bruised, and breathless, made it to the extraction point Tracer had sent. A private helicopter descended through the trees. Inside, 2 journalists, a defense attorney, and Tracer himself, face uncovered, finally. "You made it," he said quietly. Jordan clutched the now useless backup drive. "No," she replied. "He did." 024, Marcus speaks one last time on every major television network, in every city, on every screen, the final words of Lieutenant Marcus Hale played one last time. "I loved my country enough to wear its uniform. But loving something doesn't mean staying silent. If we want to protect freedom, we start by protecting the truth." The feed faded to black. But the message didn't disappear. Because this time, the truth didn't die. It lived.